All right, greetings, family. Hope everyone is doing all right on this Monday evening. It's the night time edition of Arm the Masters Black Power Media Reloaded. This is your brother, Soldier in Arms. All right, Professor Griff, bringing you a different kind of show tonight, just kind of changing the frequency. I'm starting a series, and this series is just simply called Literary Consciousness. And we're going to be doing just some we're going to do a writer's row. And writer's row simply consists of just authors, whether you wrote a children's book, a novel, or whatever it is that you wrote, a play. I wrote a book recently, and I turned it into an audio book and an ebook and some other stuff. So, writer's row. I want to just kind of highlight the a degree of literary, especially Black literary consciousness that I know is out there, and what we need to kind of tap into. All right. So greetings to everyone. Thank y'all very much. What I'm going to need y'all to do right now for this few minutes is hit 3 people up and tell them Professor Griff is back on. He's not only on at 12, but he's back on Monday nights. Now he's going to line up these authors, and we're going to dive into some serious kind of dialogue in reference to the Black literacy consciousness. We're trying to get people back into the books, back into having a conversation centered and kind of built around facts. So this whole idea of Black literary consciousness refers to the awareness and understanding that Black writers and artists have their unique cultural heritage, history, and experience within a society often shaped by racial inequalities. So there are people that come along that write books, that write articles, that write information, that still write blogs and put the information out there. Now, whether it hits the target or hits the readers, we're not sure. We only know that unless we get feedback and or we know that when someone reads it, they might quote us or whatever. So it is imperative that we support all of these authors, these writers, these journalists that we know that are constantly putting out information that'll raise the vibratory pitch of your thinking into the mind of God, into the mind of the Creator, all right, which taps into your higher consciousness. All right. So I'm an author. I know other authors. So I just said to myself, let me bring on other authors that can kind of help us talk about this whole idea of literacy, literary consciousness. So when you start thinking about the Renaissance, when you start thinking, you go back in you start thinking about who are those poets and who are those writers and who are those intellectuals, who are those people that actually wrote that help shape certain narratives to move consciousness forward, to move the culture forward, to move the people forward. One name, well, really 2 names come to mind, just right off the top of the dome. W.E.B. Du Bois, and of course, Langston Hughes. All right, so when we start talking about concepts that we can pull to help move this thing forward, to help have a solid footing and foundation in any conversation, all right, we could just basically say, well, I read it in a book and I cross references, and here it is on page yada yada yada. It talks about this. Now let's talk about it. All right. When Du Bois talked about the double consciousness, it did something to me. I added that information to a few of my lectures, and I talked about the idea of what Du Bois gave us in reference to double consciousness. If I wasn't tapped into Black literary consciousness, I would have never discovered that. I surround myself with people that are authors, that are writers, that are thinkers, and we dialogue. All right. So the first up to bat in this literary consciousness series I want to do at Writer's Row is Dr. Khalid El Hakim, a gentleman that I've been working with now for the last 20 years at the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and of course my good brother Black Dot. I want them to talk about their past work, and then we're going to bring it up to date to talk about the work that they have out now. So since I got Khalid, Greetings, peace, bro.
Assalamu alaikum. How you doing, bro?
Walaikum salam, walaikum salam, walaikum salam. And I think I have Black Dot. Let's see. Peace, that's good. Black Dot, you good?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Y'all have met one another, but let me reintroduce y'all. Dr. Khalid El Hakim, this is my brother Black Dot. Black Dot.
Oh, man, we know each other well. Yes.
Absolutely. Good to see you, bro.
Really appreciate it.
Good.
So, first I want to start off with just a brief, short introduction on who you are, and then we'll kind of dive into what is literary consciousness, and we'll start to talk about the individual works, and we'll move on from there. So, Black Dot, if you want to start, that would be a beautiful thing.
Yes, Black Dot, writer, author, poet, MC, father, husband, brother, a lover of Black people, Black movement, Black consciousness, Black everything. And in terms of a writer, I just finished my third book, official book. It's a personal story about life and my struggles and my hero's journey through this, through this earthly realm here. My first book that I'm super proud of was Hip Hop Decoded. Hold on, I think I have one copy.
Mm-hmm.
This ain't the original cover, as Griff would know, but this is the cover that the public will see. It was, I felt a void was missing in hip hop to speak about the spiritual understanding of who we are and how we use everything at our disposal, beats, rhymes, drums, to express the God within. My second book was Urban Culture Decoded, which was the landscape, the earth landscape, and certain things that were placed within, society to keep us running in place. But even in that space, we managed to overcome. And of course, the final piece of the trilogy was Gotta Laugh to Keep From Crying. I didn't start living until I thought I was dying. And so that's my personal, in terms of, and plus as an MC, I've written albums. As a poet, I've written pieces. And so writing is that form of expression that I choose to partake in.
Oh, okay. Give thanks. And Dr. Khalid El Hakim?
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Khalid El Hakim, scholar, educator, husband, father of 5 beautiful daughters, grandfather, great-grandfather.
I was waiting for that one.
55, But I taught middle school in the Detroit Public Schools for 15 years prior to doing the Black History 101 Mobile Museum full-time. This is my 30th anniversary of doing the Black History 101 Mobile Museum. The museum has traveled extensively around the country. It's been to 43 states and over 1,000 institutions. I'm an author as well. My latest book is called A Legacy in Motion, celebrating 30 years of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum. But I've also worked in the hip hop industry for quite a few years. Started off working with the Last Poets, but one of my close dear friends, Proof from D12, ran his record label, Iron Fist Records, and also was his personal manager for a little bit of time. And this book here, The Center of the Movement, Collecting Hip Hop Culture, is, I would argue, is the very first hip hop book dealing with hip hop memorabilia, which is a huge industry right now.
Right.
But this book came out in 2013. Me and my good friend, Dr. Derek Jenkins, wrote this book. And it documents, all aspects of memorabilia, from CDs, cassettes, posters, flyers, clothing items, hip hop movies, movie posters, so on and so forth. But it's a great book and one of my favorite books. And most recently, I wrote a chapter in this book called Hip Hop Archives that was written by Mark Campbell, Dr. Mark Campbell, and Dr. Murray Foreman. But it has some great scholars in here. But I wrote one chapter in this book here, and it's being taught on college campuses across the country. So that's one thing I'm very proud of. Because at this point in time, not only do we have to be scholars, but we have to archive this work. There's many different people around the country and around the world that's actually participating as scholars, as researchers, as preservers of the culture. And this book documents our efforts in that.
Okay, good. Love it, love it, love it. So my first question, well, let me just say this. After those beautiful introductions, I did, Khalid, I think I showed this to you. I'm not sure. I did receive Black Dot's book as a gift. I'm not sure if I showed it to you, Khalid, but
I did see it. That's dope, bro.
so yeah,
Yes.
so when you open it, it's a personal message.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And
That's
this
amazing.
is next level.
Indeed.
And I'm telling y'all, since then, I've looked in this thing twice, didn't even want to touch it. I just said, I keep asking them when is it coming out so I can buy one, because this one as a gift, I'm putting this one up.
Yes.
And Black Dot, the man that's on the screen with us, he taught me that, because I think he got two of everything because he's a collector. This is a beautiful gift. Thank you very much. And this beautiful piece of work right here inspired me when I started writing something similar to this, simply because I've been working with Dr. Khalid El Hakim for 20 years now. And I just said to myself, in reference to music, what can I put together that not to compete with this, but run parallel to this? So when we out in the field, all right, we'll have a tool that we can work with. All right. So with that said, my first question to both of you guys is, when I start looking back on Black literary consciousness, is it needed today? And then how are these two works, this one and Black Dot's work, how and your other works, how would they fit into the overall scheme of things to move us forward? What conversation would it spark? All right, so each one of y'all can
so you mentioned Langston Hughes,
right?
And we know Langston Hughes as mainly as a poet, right? A lot of people don't know that Langston Hughes wrote a Black history book, and this is his book here, all right. And this book here was gifted to me by Khalil Ali, Muhammad Ali's former wife.
Okay.
And she told me that this was a textbook that they used when she was a student at the University of Islam back in the 1950s. This is how they learned Black history, through Langston Hughes's Black history book. So this was their textbook. All right. So I see the work that we do in terms of literature in the Black History 101 Mobile Museum as an extension of this. We're just building on this legacy that great people like Du Bois, like Dr. Carter G. Woodson, like Langston Hughes, they left for us, right? So it's very important that we go back, read the information, and then we build upon the legacies that they left.
That's deep, man.
That's very powerful. And I'd like to add, in today's world where the attention span of young people is so short, and they have moved us into a visual state, you know what I mean, with YouTube and all of these things, that's done purposely because the power of writing and the power of reading what was written opens up so many parts and components in our minds and in our brains, especially the creative part and the creative aspect. And so a lot of this generation, they don't read, and society is structured where they don't have to read. These functional illiterates are able to move through life missing the beautiful aspect of writing and reading, because reading functions with both sides of the brain, right, left and right. So the literary, linear, and the imagination both come together when you're reading something amazing, something not only just from a historical standpoint, but something that expresses with what's in that, comes out. I am a different writer than I am an orator or MC. Right. Writing puts me in a different space. And so with young people today, not doing enough reading, in my humble opinion, because everything is in front of them so much, I think they are losing out on critical components of who we are. And so when I see people reading or somebody puts together their book or their works, I know the time, I know the spiritual space that they was in to create. And so as a writer, I appreciate that because I know what it took. And this younger generation, sort of like cursive, they don't even write cursive anymore. Right. And so they are missing out on superpowers that were bestowed upon us. And the Langston Hughes and the ones that came before us that laid it down, they were laying out, to me, the roadmap to bring us out of situations, to historically time-stamped situations. And that aspect of it hurts me when I see young people who don't read, don't write. And it's a tough situation to be in for younger people.
Right. Now, I've been and shared a stage with both of you gentlemen. I've watched your work walk off the pages of your books into real life to affect real lives. All right. What is your takeaway from how your work affects not only young people, just people in general? And then, not to compound the question, but people outside of our culture.
Well, for me, and let me give a shout out. I see my daughter's on here, Keisha. I Am Radio. Just want to give her a shout out. Much love to you,
Miss Sanchez.
Right. So in terms of the work that I do with the Black History 101 Mobile Museum and that engagement with the public, it's powerful simply because having these primary source material in front of people, the stories that trigger in people and the stories that they share as a result of seeing and experiencing this work. And Black Dot, you just mentioned that our young people don't read, and that's true. And the whole cursive thing, that's a lost art now. And one of the sad things too is when you have primary source material and young people can't read cursive, you end up missing out on being able to read a handwritten letter that George Washington Carver wrote that's in the collection right now. So these are things as teachers that we have to go back and teach so that they can, when they get this history, they're able to interpret it and read it. Now, we're in a very interesting situation with AI now. And if we can teach young people how to use it effectively, then we can kind of, jump through some of these hoops that we need to, jump through to get them engaged. So, for example, if we have a letter, like I said, I have one that's written by George Washington Carver, and it's handwritten in cursive. Now you can take a picture of that letter and ask ChatGPT to interpret that letter, and then you can go and read that letter and get the information. So you don't have to, actually learn how to read, although I encourage everybody to learn how to read cursive, because what that does is psychologically, you get a chance to see the person's personality and emotion in the cursive. All right. Now I taught middle school for 15 years. All right. I'm not good in remembering faces, but if somebody gave me the name of one of my former students, the first thing that pops up in my head is their signature, even till today. All right. So I know signatures, I know handwriting, and and you learn, again, people's personality, you learn emotion, you learn whether or not someone's self-confident or not. If somebody's very confident, look at their handwriting. You know what I'm saying? They have very neat handwriting. If they're confident and they're artistic, but if somebody doesn't care, they'll write however, right? And that generally speaking. Now you do have some geniuses who got chicken scratch and is just trying to get information out, and they just write the way they write. Now I know some people like that as well. But again, these types of experiences that I have with people, and this goes across racial boundaries as well. You walk into the museum and you see an artifact and it resonates with you so deeply, right? And you think about your own personal lived experience, and it brings out of you memories, and you want to have conversations with people, right? And when you can get people to open up like that, then you can start to take people where you want in terms of the timeline of history, all right? And then you ask critical questions, all right? And some of the material is very uncomfortable, as it should be, because history is uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Especially dealing with the type of history that we deal with. And we got, we have to teach people to think critically about the realities of what history is, especially at this particular point in time where they're trying to erase all of our history.
Right.
So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
No, those are very, very great points, especially about the cursive, because, writing is spelling, it's magic. It's your ability to take something unseen or unheard and place it in a time space that now it can actualize. And so, yes, I've seen some people with some beautiful handwriting, and it's no matter what they're writing, it just looks poetic. I got an aunt, no matter what she writes, it's just beautiful. Me, chicken scratch, mainly because my mind is moving too fast for what it is I'm writing. Now, back to the reading aspect, and I feel what I did was, when I wrote Hip Hop Decoded, was try to close a gap between young people who I felt were starting to drift and the eldership's teachings. All of the elders who were teaching us about who we were, sometimes it's not what you teach, it's how it's taught. And so when Malcolm hit the streets, it was very effective because he understood their language. Clarence 13X hit the streets. And so me trying to make the higher sciences that the elders were teaching palatable for hip hoppers. It wasn't an easy thing, but once I grasped the formula through writing by certain trigger words that I know that they like, and making correlations with the chakras and hip hop artists, I felt it opened up a vortex where young people now didn't feel as intimidated by, these teachings, because sometimes when you see the scholars who taught from a certain platform and you think that they don't understand your struggle, they do. They come from the same cloth, but they're trying to raise us up and to a point so we can be proud of who we are. I felt that when I wrote Hip Hop Decoded, I moved the gap just a little bit closer, because back to what Public Enemy and them was doing prior, using the spoken word and the written word and bits and pieces of the eldership, it brought it to a place. But then, hip hop began to switch, as we know, and I felt if the timing was right to use a language that the street guys understood, but clothed into the sciences that the elders was teaching. And so I use that when I say, to answer the first part of your question about how do I feel personally, the writings were affecting generations,
Right. So with the assault and the attack on Black consciousness, and then the theft of African consciousness, a minute ago, we can roll our minds and our energy and our spirit back to a time, because we're readers, we study. In order for us to be writers, we have to read a lot in order to put together a small amount of work. You understand what I'm saying? Like when you go through this, would you say, Khalid, how long would it have taken you to put this together, just in a nutshell, real quick? Would you say 10 years?
10 years, easy.
Right. So I'm saying to you, so now a minute ago, we weren't even allowed to read. We were punished for reading. Some cases, tongues were cut out. Some cases we got severe punishment. And then the people that was trying to teach us to read got punished. With that said, how can you convey that to young people at the same time museums getting looted, critical information is being taken out of the little tiny curriculum that they do have in the school system for us, the pushback on DEI, critical race theory, museums are closing, and the revisionist history that's going on right now as we speak. Can y'all speak to that?
What you just laid out, Griff, shows that the work that we all do is as important now as it has ever been.
Yes.
So, I mean, we cannot have enough conversations like this at this critical time. So,
Right.
I can't even tell you how important this is. And the fact that right now, usually we're setting up a tour schedule to go around the colleges right now. That's just not happening this year. You know what I'm saying? Because of all the things that are going on in the universities and in different communities around the country. I just heard today they're cutting lunch programs and breakfast programs in K through 12.
Wow.
So how do you prepare young people to come into school hungry and ready to learn?
No, that's a fact.
You know, so I mean, we have to go really back to basics, and it's really going to take the communities around the country in ciphers, you know, in small groups, to wrap our arms around the schools that we send our children to, and we're going to have to step up, and we're going to have to go out just like the Panthers did back in the 60s, man. And we have to do free breakfast programs, free lunch programs, and take care of our people. This fool in office is forcing us to do what Donald Elijah Muhammad told us to do back in the 1930s, all the way up through the mid 70s. We got to do for self. We're forced into a situation where we have to come together and organize and unify as a people. We're going to have to do it.
Right.
Or like he said, suffer the consequences, which we're starting to suffer those consequences right now.
And that's not a bad thing to have to do for self. And when we think about sometimes what seems to be chaos is the reordering of what's important. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes it takes a fool, you know what I mean, to bring about the change that makes us do what we have to do. Because we can get lazy. Hip hop made a lot of people lazy. And what I mean by that is the illusion of success, that we're doing well and all of these things. And we are people who have to keep moving forward. We are people that almost need to be agitated to bring out the best in who we are. And so we're going to have to get back to workshops. Sort of like with here, this is the beginning of highlighting artists and writers and poets. We got to get back to actual workshops to teach young people that writing is their superpower. Now, with that being said, if you look at these YNs and these hip hop artists, they already have it encoded within them. It's just that they're missing the responsibility of writing. You know what I mean? So they're writing craziness and all of these kind of things. Once they understand as a writer, you have a responsibility. And I'm not saying you can't have fun and be creative, but we have to have a response, because these words never die. They continue to reverberate forever and ever. And the signal that other, places within our universe is picking up is of a toxic vibration because of the writing. You know what I mean? Because of the vibration that we're putting out. And so I'm always trying to tell young people, and I've been there, and I don't want to act like, I wasn't 8 years old and, 12 years, and you do mischief things. When you come into the understanding of who you are through reading and the proper reading, you know that when you sit down to write, there is a responsibility that comes with that. Because if one person buy this book, it don't matter. The book is now in the universe. You know what I mean? The book is forever. These words that we put down, they just go and go and go. And so we have a responsibility. And if you trace that vibratory frequency back to its original source, I am responsible for that. And so with all of the DEI and the programs and the food, the lunch programs being taken out, that's going to create more stress. These children don't go to school as is. You know what I mean? I tell a story in my book. I had to go to school for breakfast and lunch because dinner wasn't guaranteed in my household. However, while I was there, I was learning. You know what I mean? And so those programs mean more to us than just a breakfast and lunch. Sometimes it's the only place we get solace from what's going on inside the home.
Right.
But everybody has a writer inside of them, and not always to publish something, but to get out what's inside of you, your trauma, your story, your pain, your history, your imagination. And the last thing I'll say is this: in the early days of hip hop, we took on these alternate names like Super Galactic so and so to create an alter ego to shelter us from the hardships we was really going through. Hip hop gave us an opportunity to be somebody else, even if it was just for a little while, and it starts in the mind. This is how all of these superhero characters came about, and they were to create an alternate reality through writing, you know, and poetry and acting, different ways of an expression of the word, which help us to escape a lot. So writing is important. Reading is important. Dancing is important.
Right.
So and what I'm hearing you saying, Black Dot, is that this is about a healing.
Yes.
This is about healing our trauma and the things that so writing, hip hop as a culture, all of this is a healing, which is extremely important.
And it gives us an opportunity for those who study history to right the wrongs that came, you know, because we're in an age of information. So the reference point of something Langston Hughes may have wrote, we're in a different time and space, and what's available to Professor Griff to add on to that story so that it's one story being told from different time points is important. You know what I mean? A few of our elders were ahead of their time and were reading and writing for a future time, but you can only read, write, and give a reference point from where you are based on your understanding. But we are in this age of information, and I don't want to be sidetracked by that to access more in a shorter period of time, but make sure that when we write the history, our job is to even correct the elders and not correct them in a harsh way, but they did the best they could do based on the information that was available. But now I have certain things available to me that I can fill in those empty spaces for some of the elders that came before. And then the young people behind us can do the same.
Right. If you're just tuning in, this is Professor Griff, and I have with me Black Dot, the author of this beautiful work. And I believe, Black Dot, you have 3 other works?
Yes.
All right. And the author of this book, Gotta Laugh to Keep from Crying. All right. I didn't start living until I thought I was dying. Deep, very deep introspection and of his clearing away the lens that he's viewing the world through, and then vice versa. Because we could have a paradigm, and a lot of times paradigms often shift. Yes. So rather than have a view of the world, sometimes we have a world view. You understand? And we write from that particular perspective. And then I also have Dr. Khalid El Hakim, the author of this book. All right, A Legacy in Motion, celebrating 30 whole years, man, of Black History 101 mobile museum, zigzagging and crisscrossing across the country. Now, I have a very complex, compound question. I'm not putting you on the spot. Trust me. I'm not setting you all up. At the same time, I need y'all to kind of use both parts of your brain. When you first put the pen to the pad and you decided to write a book, simple question. Why? At the same time you're answering that, give me your book list. What is your mandatory books that you have to read for people that are listening? And I want the people that are listening to write these books down that they give us. I'm talking mandatory. You understand what I'm saying? Like when I say mandatory, if you're not reading The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, it's a problem. Dr. Francis Cresswell, if you're not reading ISIS papers, it's a problem. Yeah. So I'm not going to go over my list. I'm going to turn it over to y'all. When you first put the pen to the pad and you started to write, Like, why? Why do you feel you needed to blend in to that literary traffic?
All right, so I'm going to tell you the truth on this one. After traveling with Professor Griff for the past 30 years, when we first met, this brother had probably about 3 books under his belt already, right? And I'm watching this brother produce work after work after work. You can't be that close to somebody producing that type of work and being consistent and not produce something. Now, I never thought I was ever going to produce 1 book, but I got my first book out. Once I got that first one out, I was like, all right, let me step the game up. But I think my first book came out when I just started my master's program. It was a book of quotes, and so so it was a book of quotes, that first book. But once I got that first book out, they just, I do a lot of different things. So I'm a photographer as well, so I had to put out a book of photography. And then I had, big in hip hop memorabilia, so that book came out. And then reflecting back on this 30th anniversary of the museum, I started looking at these artifacts that I have. I started looking at old flyers that we have. To go back and look at a flyer that's, the very first flyer that came out when we did the University of Michigan. I think that was 2013-ish or something like around that. No, it was earlier than that. Anyway, 2007.
Right.
That was the first time I was on a college campus. But the 10 years prior to that, the museum was just localized in Detroit, right? And so you had to really, be in Detroit to kind of experience it. Mm-hmm. Then it started to hit college campuses and it grew from there. But when I put pen to pad on this latest book, really just trying to document for myself, for future generations, for my children, like the work that I did, that which is really a part of the Black museum movement in America. I didn't find out that I did anything really significant in terms of museum until I was working on my PhD at the University of Illinois.
Wow.
And I was doing research on Black museums and read a book that a white woman wrote about the Black museum movement in America. And ended up seeing my name in that book.
Wow.
Wow. And I never saw my work as being in line with the Black museum movement in America. So, again, this is just an extension. And I want to make sure that I told my own story before somebody else wrote my story.
Right. That's important.
So
That's
very important. So I want to get the record straight. You know what I'm saying? So that was the reason especially for this latest book.
Someone's asking you, what is the name of your book? Give them the 4. I think you have 4 books out now.
Yeah. So again, the first, the latest one is A Legacy in Motion, celebrating 30 years of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum. I have a book of photography called Ruminations.
That book is dope, bro.
And I wrote it during the pandemic. And so a part of people often ask me, how do I do self-care when I'm carrying this type of material around the country? Because in the collection, there's Klan memorabilia, there's lynching photographs, the chains from slavery,
right?
All this, hard material in the collection. And so, how do I, cope with that? And so a part of that is going out and documenting just, landscapes, right? Just going out and just documenting nature. So during the pandemic, I was celebrating Ramadan, and so for 30 days I took 30 pictures, and then I married quotes from Rumi onto those photographs.
Wow.
So after 30 days, it was 30 photographs with quotes from Rumi. All right. So that's the photography book, and I'm very, very proud of that book. And then The Center of the Movement, Collecting Hip Hop Memorabilia is the other book. And then finally, I do have a children's book that I got to share with you all real quick.
All right.
And Khalil's busy.
I thought I had a copy of it around here. I don't. But it's called Khalid and Khalila's ABCs of Black History. And it's me and my daughter visualizing ourselves as different historical figures. A is for Muhammad Ali, B is for Octavia Butler, C is for Shirley Chisholm, D is for Angela Davis, E is for Duke Ellington, F is for Aretha Franklin, so on and so forth. So you got 26 people profiled in this book. And, and how do you convince, at the time, a 10-year-old who sees her father go out and do this history material, and she has no interest in it at all at 10, right? So the idea was to put her in this book so she could see herself as part of history, and that's what this book did.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. For me, I had in 2005 had just received some detrimental information that my kidneys had failed, and that I might have 2 or 3 years left on the planet. And so that forced me to write Hip Hop Decoded hastily, meaning very fast, because I felt I was in a race against time at that point. And I wanted to leave something here that said I was here. You know what I mean? And so that's why in the first run of that is errors all through the book. You know how hip hop is. A run-on sentence. I said this, whatever, because it was what I felt at the time was my gift and vision to leave something that I felt 30 years from now can still be studied. And here we are 20 years later, and the information in that book is more relevant now. You see what's going on in social media. Now they're catching up to things that we were talking about 20 years ago.
Right.
And ironically, 20 years, I'm still here, which led to the next book, which led to finally this book. And it became about legacy. When you've been here long enough,
right,
you want to leave something. To me, legacy is not about money per se. It's about, something you can leave that will last beyond money. My great-grandchildren may not even know what money is. However, if I leave a body of work that they can get to know who I was, what my experiences was, what I've been through, and things of that nature, that's more valuable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when you just leave or start thinking about leaving your children money, but you don't teach them the understanding of how this money was made, the struggles, the sacrifices, they spend the money because they have no connection to it. The currency that you left, excuse me, didn't tap into their essence where they understand it's bigger than money. It's a, continuation of something else. And knowledge works the same way. Grandpa is going to leave a series of books here, a series of videos here, a series of lectures here, a series of albums here that is going to be enough because we are. You know what it is. That helps continue and bridge the story through the DNA.
Right.
See, when my grandchildren read my story, they're realigning their DNA. You know what I mean? Because it is a part of them that came before them. And so that's the special part about it. And so that's why I think I'm in a real great space, where I am writing and have found the time to do so. Right. And so that's what brought about, me writing. Now, my book list.
Whoa, hold on. Before you do that, let me read something while you'll get your book list together. And while you're getting the book list together, put your information in the chat where people can purchase your books because they're asking.
Okay.
All right, so let me read this real quick. So, Khalid, you might need to put on some glasses. I'm just saying. Anyway, double consciousness, the concept of famously articulated by W.E.B. Du Bois, described as experience of African Americans navigating two identities. And we definitely have to navigate two identities. When I pulled from that, this whole idea of code switching, I'm not going to read the whole thing real quick. Historical consciousness, This idea of historical consciousness, what does that mean? And our work, does it speak to that? We may have a consciousness, but does it go back in the present in order to move it forward? Black literary consciousness involves an awareness of the historical experiences of African Americans, including and not only slavery, Reconstruction, civil rights movement. The awareness informs the writing and provides a framework, which is important. Khalid, your work provides a framework in the area of preserving artifacts. Black Dot, in the realm of hip hop, high infinite power healing our people. Your work provides a framework, almost a reference point. You understand what I'm saying? Decoding, the whole idea of decoding, and then the whole idea of urban culture. So cultural identity, the Black literary consciousness recognizes and celebrates the unique cultural traditions and oral storytelling, along with music and the art form. All right. We have to paint pictures in our books for people to see them in our writing. All right. A couple of more things. The whole idea of social justice. The Black literary consciousness often engages with issues of social injustice, inequality, and systematic racism, aiming to challenge dominant narratives and promote understanding and change. Last but not least, this idea of resilience and resistance. Is your work set up to do that inside of the framework of your work? Can you take that and speak to that with your work? Can you invite them to the museum, Khalid, out of your 250 pieces that you have on 10 to 15 tables, and say, yeah, I'm speaking to the resilience of who we are as a people. And I'm showing you the resistance. You understand? From the first couple of tables to the last, I'm showing you that. Black Dot, in your work, can you hold it up at a lecture and say, listen, the resilience of what we went through as far as hip hop heads, from where we came from to where we are now?
Yes.
The framework of your work, does it speak to that? So now when you give us this list, I'm taking it, these are the individuals that you've pulled from in your growth, from first putting the pen to the pad, and excuse my flowery, I'm just saying. From the first time you put the pen to the pad, you made that black dot on the paper. You understand what I'm saying? To now, what is that list? What does that list look like?
So for me, my list, one of the books I'm reading right now is Ready for the Revolution. The great Kwame Ture's book. Phenomenal book. Someone who was so underrated, someone who's so dismissed, but that brother was everywhere throughout our struggle, right? So starting off with being in Mississippi and registering people to vote in the Black Power era. And, his whole career was just amazing. So he's a giant that we don't give enough respect to. And that brother's book has to be 500 or 600 pages and still doesn't do him justice in terms of the work that he committed himself to. So his book, The Souls of Black Folk, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Up from Slavery, Dr. Booker T. Washington, his book needs to be read. The narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, of course, the miseducation of the Negro, the autobiography of Malcolm X, which is a game changer, it changed my life. Asada, you gotta read the books of our women. Asada's autobiography. Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, phenomenal book. All right. Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning. Richard Wright's Native Son, Going Back.
Oh, yes.
James Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain. James Baldwin's Fire Next Time. Yeah, I remember that. France Fanon's Wretched of the Earth.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying? But there's so many. I mean, there's so many books. But I mean, if you can get 10 of those,
right.
And I also tell people all the time, if you really want to know the contribution that Dr. King made,
wow,
read his first the only 5 books that he wrote in his lifetime. People write about Dr. King's life, but people rarely read the work that Dr. King, the books that he wrote. So read his work as well.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and shout out to brother Ben Frake too from Detroit.
Oh,
Detroit
okay.
House.
Yeah, I was trying to put something in the comment
Yeah,
section.
it doesn't seem like it's coming up in the chat. So if y'all want to text me, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's the Shop Urban X. ShopUrbanX.com is where you can get my works right now. ShopUrbanX.com.
Okay, cool.
My book list is not going to be that long, but Richard Wright, of course, Native Son, Autobiography of Malcolm X, Message to the Black Man. Very, very important book for me. Miseducation, of the Negro. ISIS Papers by Francis Cress Welsing. A Raisin in the Sun. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya Angelou.
Right.
These are books that I read, in school that shaped, my consciousness about our struggle and who we were. And then, of course, as I got older, I moved into more like the Kabbalion, to kind of delve into the spiritual aspect of things. Behold the Pale Horse, and to help me understand just how devious white supremacy is. You know what I mean? And so, books of that nature, 48 Laws of Power, understanding war. And so those are the books that immediately come to mind when I think about, the books that I love the most. I read a lot of Judy Blume's books. I don't know why, as a kid, but it just helped me with reading. You know what I mean? And so those were some of the books that I love the most. And of course, a series of occult books and astrological books and metaphysical books, that just go on and on. But those were the basics, helping me understand, who I was and who I am.
Right. So then as we wind this up, we only got about 5 more minutes. So real quick, if you was to talk to parents right now that are listening and grandparents, and in Khaled's case, great grandparents. So how would you, what would you tell them the easiest way to get their children interested in reading? So for example, the approach I took, I started out with an ebook, my new book, The Birth. I started out with the ebook. All right, because they have their phones. I said, I'm gonna send it to their phones, send it to the tablet, send it to the computer. Then I turned around, took that little bit of money and invested it into the audio book. All right, and like you, Black Dot, Khaled will tell you, I had all kind of mistakes. He was like, nah, bro, you can't put this out. You got to correct that, and that. So anyway, then I turned around and did the audio book. It came out kind of robotic, whatever. You could tell it's me, but, I'm trying to get used the technology.
Yes.
What do y'all think is the best way to reach parents to get them to teach their children to be interested, to get them, interested in reading again? And the whole idea of comprehension. Let's keep that in mind.
I think that all parents, grandparents need to set their children up with their own personal libraries, even if it's 5 or 10 books. They should be on grade level, on a level that they can read, so that they know that these are their books. Connect them with other children and start doing book clubs and get kids engaged and having conversations about the information that they're reading. I think that's one of the most important ways to get them to own up to the responsibility of being literate. All right, so we have to teach them. And another thing that's really important, we have to read to them.
Boom.
We have to read to them, right? We have to show them the process, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I told you this, Griff, before, but one of the reasons why I started reading early on, because I never considered myself a reader, but I worked at a shoe store back at Northland Mall in Detroit, and the shoe salesman used to come downstairs and they would simply just read the newspaper when they had time off, when they were on their breaks. And I was maybe 13 or 14, seeing these men pick up newspapers and read and be engaged. And because I saw that, I was socialized into saying, oh, that's what men do who have jobs. They read the newspaper.
Wow.
And I started reading the newspaper. That became a thing just by observation. So we have to show our young people how reading looks, right? And kind of orientate them into that process and read to them. Reading should not be something that you just do at school.
Yes.
Reading should be seen at home. I remember in the household growing up having Encyclopedia Britannica at the crib.
Right.
I would just pick that up and just read it on my own because it was there. And then just learn so much about the world just going through the encyclopedia reading. You know what I'm saying? So we need to take it back to basics approach with it. Yes, technology is important, but again, going back to what Black Dot said, there's something that happens when you open up a book and you put your eyes on the page and your eyes follow those words, sentences, paragraphs. Read a whole chapter, and that the feeling of accomplishment that you get when you read a chapter. And then once you read a book and you can go and say, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's very important.
And to add on to that, what made me a reader was my mother was a avid reader. And she had the highest IQ in my family. All she did is read. And so when she would be sitting in the windowsill reading, I wanted some of her affection. So the only way I could get my mother's attention was to crawl up under her and read. And so that's the connection. I think parents today should turn the TV off for a little while.
Right.
Half hour a day. Start with half hour, and everybody at the table should be reading something. Now, what it does a couple of things. First of all, the attention span of this generation is so short. So first they're gonna sit there and just wander because they're irritated because they can't pick up their phone and do what they normally do. However, once it becomes a consistent thing to see everybody read whatever you want, that's another thing. If you want to read comic books, read whatever's going to pique your interest. What my son Eli, he has cerebral palsy, right? And it affects his ability to walk, but his mind is very sharp, right? And I worked with him with Hooked on Phonics. We would read. Now what he does, when he watches television, he uses the closed caption, right? So the closed caption, he's reading along, you know what I mean, with what's being said. Right. And now his vocabulary is very sharp. And when people run up on him and they visually see he has a disability, and then he opens his mouth, they're blown away by his ability to be articulate. Right. And I learned this from my mother. My mother would use big words and then ask me, and I'd be like, what does that mean? She'd go look it up. And I'd have to go to the dictionary. You know how it's alphabetical order, find the word, find it, and use it in a sentence. I noticed with my son Eli in particular, I might mention a word and I say, well, that was very intricate the way they blah, blah, and I keep talking. He never forgot the word intricate. And so he'll go to his room, he'll find out what the meaning of the word is. And next thing you know, he's using it in a conversation. And I can tell that's the way he was building his vocabulary. Right. So parents have to up their vocabulary and how they speak. They have to take time out, read. And if your child can't read, that's okay. Let's work this out together. And once children can see reading and putting words together, it then opens up. But if there's no reading in the household from anybody, except when they go to school, it feels like a task. When you go to school and the teacher called on you to read, I liked it because, it gave me a chance to, show I was smart because I wasn't the best dressed, but the girls could see I'm smart. I might be able to get a girlfriend out of this shit. But some kids, they get all because you're telling them to do something that makes them uncomfortable. Reading in school is supposed to be like any other time, but if you don't get the practice at home, so put the TV on closed caption and tell them, okay, you want to watch this? I'm gonna turn the sound down. Now you can watch it, but you got to read. And I bet you next thing you know, they'll start different techniques that parents can use.
Right.
Make reading fun, or take those trips to Barnes and Nobles. I love when I go into Barnes and Nobles. They don't have that many anymore. And you see a whole family in there looking at books that interest them and sitting down and reading, because it is a beautiful thing to be able to read, because it leads to writing, which leads to magic.
Right. Last but not least, as we wind down, give me a quote, give me a saying, give me something that can stick to the ribs, not only for young people, but right now we need to speak to the parents, because they're responsible. If we say children are not reading, then why? I look at the parents. You understand what I'm saying? Are you creating an atmosphere like you two brothers just gave us, creating that atmosphere, that safe environment for you to read, and everything don't have to be perfect. You understand what I'm saying? Reading to them is very key. And both of you guys said that. Reading to them is very, very important. So give me a quote as we get out of here, and then let them know how to get your book. Give them a website or whatever.
All right. So let me start with the book. The book you can pick up at blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. But my quote, I'm going to go back to our brother Kwame Ture, and in the spirit of the times that we're in right now, where struggle, everybody's struggling right now. Kwame Ture said that struggle is not, he said struggle is eternal. The struggle is eternal. It does not stop. This is something that we constantly have to be engaged in. Sometimes we find ourselves asleep at the wheel. And this is one of the moments, many of us are. And we have to remember that this struggle does not stop. This is an eternal work that we have to be engaged in. All right. And if we're not, again, we'll end up suffering the consequences of it. But my quote again is, the struggle is eternal. Kwame Ture.
Okay.
Revolution is not an event, it's a process.
That's right.
And that process is a part of that eternal struggle that Khalil is speaking of. And it is an ongoing fight. We're in it. We chose to be in it. Don't be mad at those who haven't chose to be in it, because their assignment is not your assignment. The separation is here now. And we're seeing it more so than ever. The crash outs, the chosen ones, the demons, these are all categories that are now making themselves more defined. So if you were built for this battle, embrace it. If you were built for this struggle, embrace it, because it is your time now to do what you were sent here to do, to hold your end of the bargain.
Right.
And so I'm not looking for fast, dopamine hits of revolution. I understand that I am in a process, and time becomes an illusion within that process.
Right. So as we get out of here, I want to thank you very much. This is Professor Griff, and of course, this is Dr. Khalid El Hakim, the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and this is Black Dynamic MC. We didn't even get to that part. Dynamic MC, author, and both of these brothers are just good brothers, and both of them are lecturers, speakers in their own right, and command an audience and just kind of know how to deliver this information. This is the first installment of the Literary Consciousness and Writers Row. I'm your host, Professor Griff, and this is Arm the Masses right here on Serious Minds, RNTV, brought to you by Black Power Media Reloaded. Salute, brothers. Y'all take care. Really appreciate that. All right, thank you very much. Wa alaikum salam. Peace. Take care.